The 2021 documentary Val is out. Is it any good? Should you watch it? Let me help you with that decision coming up next. Val is a documentary about Val Kilmer, a major Hollywood star in the 80s, 90s, the 2000s, and so on up till the present day, I suppose. By now, he's in his early 60s. He's had throat cancer. He's lost the use of his voice almost, although he does speak and it's very little hard to hear him. And he also shot thousands of hours of footage of himself from the early 80s at least through the present day, behind the scenes movie footage from, say, Tombstone or Top Gun. You see him at Juilliard. You see home movies. In fact, he and his brothers in the 70s, I think, made a lot of home movies that are actually pretty interesting, quite creative. And so this movie blends together all of that footage with present-day footage of Val Kilmer circa 2020 to 2021. Kilmer has become a scrapbooker. That's shown in the movie. He's become an artist, a local artist, and this movie is like a scrapbook. In fact, he is credited as the cinematographer here. And it's really well done. I think the whole movie's cinematography, and especially its editing, are really good, and I strongly recommend watching this movie just for its editing. There's some great sequences in here that intercut all kinds of different styles of footage. Mr. Kilmer says that this is a story of acting, and it's a journey of trying to find himself through art. It's about truth and illusion, he says. I'm not sure that the movie does all that much with that. I'm reminded, of course, the Orson Welles documentary F for Fake, which really is about truth and illusion. But here Mr. Kilmer is trying to present himself to us, but I also think find himself and present a documentary record of his life. Now, I remember Val Kilmer from the 80s and 90s. He was a major Hollywood star. I remember going to see The Saint in the movie theater. The Batman movie he was in, Tombstone, was a wildly popular hit, especially because of his performance in that. The Iceman, he played Mad Mardigan in Willow, and it goes on and on. So I fondly remember him, and this movie comes out during a wave of 80s nostalgia fare in the last 5, almost 10 years now. A lot of love for the 1980s pop culture, even through the 1990s here, and I think this movie really challenges that wave of nostalgia, which usually is just about good feelings about the past. This movie, very strongly to me at least, is very sad on the fleeting nature of time, how change is just ravishing, how vanity is fleeting, beauty is fleeting, because you get to see Kilmer today at 60 years old after throat cancer and has basically lost his voice, or nearly so, with the old Val Kilmer, who's great looking, who has a voice, obviously singing Jim Morrison very well in the Doors movie. And so it's, to me, the overriding feeling of this movie is that all is vanity, all is fleeting, it's all going away. Even though there are some glimpses of hope, I suppose, in here, this movie is really, to me, strongly about that very thing. As well, Mr. Kilmer does not seem all that satisfied with the sum total of his life. One reason is that his very creative and talented younger brother, died at age 15. And you can see this kid's home movies. They're actually really good. And he shows up throughout the entire movie, this brother who died tragically and accidentally. So Kilmer does seem to be haunted by that. And then when he gets into movies, he seems to disdain that to a certain extent. He wants to be an actor. He was at Juilliard. He was the youngest person ever accepted to Juilliard's acting school. But then, after he gets into the movies, he doesn't seem to be able to play characters, rich, drawn-out characters. Now, some of them are, like Doc Holliday, for example, and he admits that. But for the most part, I think he feels trapped in the world of fame and acting, and especially Hollywood, the whole culture of Hollywood. It's a classic story, of course, of the actor who doesn't get to be an actor because he's too much of a star. I found it pretty effective that he was speaking, and thank you, Mr. Kilmer, for being brave enough to speak on camera, even though, one, it's hard to understand them, two, they didn't put subtitles at the bottom. I like that fact, because you get him in his raw, just post-cancer speaking voice, and it's really sad in a way, but maybe it's uplifting because he survived cancer and he's still going, and he puts himself out there to the public. I thought this was a pretty good documentary. It could have been more complex, more rich, more interesting, but to get it there would have been more of a challenge. I think you watch this movie as, first of all, an exercise in nostalgia, but then realizing that your nostalgia will be crushed because you will see the difference between the 80s and today, and you'll see how quickly time passes if you're my age and you remember him in the 1980s. You will understand that in 20 years from now, circa 2021, goes by quickly, and what will be lost between now and then. This is what the movie to me is really talking about quite a bit. Thankfully, Mr. Kilmer has his children. His son does a voiceover here in the first person of Mr. Kilmer, and his son's voice sounds exactly like his. I was tricked so many times into believing that it was Val Kilmer's voice, but they do show you on camera that his son is the voiceover, so it's really good that they do that at least a couple times. I think this movie meets mostly the high quality that the studio A24 has been producing. I don't think this by any means their greatest work, but if you're looking for something easy and breezy to watch, but also with a little bit of profundity, this movie would be pretty good for you, I think. What do you think about Val? What do you think of this review? Let us know in the comments. Please subscribe to this channel for more great content. Thank you. Have a great day.